by the blazing constellations. Ella, we've arrived at a pivotal moment in our journey through traditional astrology. With the planets behind us, the road ahead leads straight into signs and houses, our next great adventure.
And yet, I can't help but feel like something's been left on the table. We've introduced these 4 fascinating horoscopes: Dickens, Petrarch, Tilak, and Copernicus. But we haven't truly visited them. Just glimpses, really.
A fair observation, but as you know, the ancients didn't rush the stars. Before a proper delineation, we must master our fundamentals: signs, houses, sect, dignities, aspects. Every layer adds clarity.
Still, a thoughtful recap could bring those charts back into focus. We've covered so much already. Maybe it's time to revisit the lives behind the placements. Just a little reflection before we push ahead.
Charmed by Mercury's swift wings, you're absolutely right. Let's walk through their lives again, chart by chart, and I'll even recommend a few biographies that every serious student should keep on their shelf.
Perfect. I'll cue up the flashbacks. Let's explore how these 4 lived under the heavens, and what their stars reveal in hindsight.
Then let the retrospective begin. Through the charts of time, we go. By Jupiter's mighty thunder. Welcome to episode 16 of Learning Traditional Astrology. I'm Arlo, your guide to the old cosmic ways, and today, we're stepping back to revisit 4 horoscopes we've only glimpsed until now.
Charles Dickens, Petrarch, Tilak, and Copernicus. 4 lives, 4 charts, and so many unanswered questions. I'm excited to go deeper this time, and yes, I'm ready for those book recommendations too.
A wise astrologer never skips biography. Ella, knowing the person grounds the chart in real life, and I must say, you held your own in last week's planetary quiz. Not quite the crown, but certainly the charm.
I'll take it. I'm still adjusting from modern to traditional, but it's like learning a new dialect of the same cosmic language.
Hello again. I'm Cherry, your robotic assistant, optimized for historical recall and planetary precision. Standing by for flashback protocol.
Today's journey begins with Charles Dickens, the master of Victorian storytelling and one of the most revealing charts we've seen. Cherry, initiate the flashback. Let's trace the heavens of a literary giant.
Engaging time scroll. Chart and biography of Charles Dickens, loading now.
Okay, Cherry, let's pull up Charles Dickens' birth details.
Accessing database. Charles Dickens was born on February 7, 1812, at 7:50 p.m. in Portsmouth, England.
Great. How accurate is that data?
The Rawdon accuracy rating is A.
A rating? I'm not entirely familiar with how that system works.
By Saturn's stern gaze. Clara, it's crucial. Lois Rawdon created a rating system so astrologers could rely on verified birth information. An A rating means we can trust it, somewhat, though it's not as ironclad as an AA rating.
Interesting. In my modern practice, I've mostly taken birth times at face value, so I guess this rating system gives us a bit more certainty about timing?
Exactly. Cherry, care to summarize the Rawdon ratings for them?
Certainly. AA rating is based on official records. A rating, like Dickens's, relies on data quoted by the individual or a close associate. B indicates biography, and so on. The lower ratings, C, DD, X, XX, are not considered reliable.
Perfect. So, an A rating is good enough for our purpose. Cherry, cast Charles Dickens' birth chart, whole sign houses, no outer planets.
Understood. Generating the traditional birth chart now.
There we go. Ella, can you read off his ascendant and midheaven?
Sure. He's got Virgo rising at 18 degrees 49 minutes, and the midheaven sits in Gemini at 15 degrees 32 minutes.
Virgo ascendant for a writer makes sense. Didn't Dickens focus on meticulous detail in his novels?
Indeed. So, Clara, since you've mastered the basics, what's the chart sect here?
Let's see. The sun's in Aquarius, below the horizon, so that indicates a nocturnal chart.
Excellent. A night chart it is. Cherry, can you list out all the planets and their positions?
Of course. Saturn is in Capricorn at 4 degrees 22 minutes, 5th house. Jupiter in Gemini at 26 degrees 29 minutes, 10th house. Mars in Aries at 7 degrees 32 minutes, 8th house. The Sun in Aquarius at 17 degrees 57 minutes, 6th house. Venus in Pisces at 16 degrees 15 minutes, 7th house. Mercury in Capricorn at 22 degrees 10 minutes, 5th house. And the Moon is in Sagittarius at 12 degrees 36 minutes, 4th house.
Perfect. Anything missing, Ella?
I'd like the nodes and part of fortune, please.
North node is in Virgo at 9 degrees 11 minutes, South node in Pisces at 9 degrees 11 minutes, and the part of fortune is in Scorpio at 24 degrees 11 minutes, 3rd house.
Thanks, Cherry. So, Arlo, what's next?
Now that we know Dickens' chart setup and sect, it's time to talk ephemeris. We want more information about the movement of the planets.
An ephemeris, Arlo? In the digital era, why bother with a table when a computer can do all this behind the scenes?
Ella, the ephemeris is invaluable. It shows us when a planet stations, turns retrograde, or forms key aspects, crucial for understanding transits around a birth chart.
All right, let's see if it's as useful as you claim. You've got my attention.
Welcome back to our exploration of Charles Dickens' birth chart. Before we dig deeper into his astrological aspects, we should learn about the man himself. Clara, I believe you've read several of his biographies. Would you mind giving us an overview of Dickens' life story?
Sure, Arlo. I haven't prepared an official presentation, but I can summarize the main points. Dickens was born on February 7, 1812, in Portsmouth, England. His father worked for the Navy Pay Office but struggled with finances, so the family moved around a lot. Eventually, they ended up in London, but money issues got worse. When Charles was about 12, his father landed in debtor's prison, and Charles had to work in a shoe polish factory. That experience really shaped him. He went from a brief, shaky childhood straight into adult responsibilities.
Wait, he worked in a factory at 12? That must have been traumatic. Did he ever go back to school?
Yes, briefly. After his father was released, Dickens returned to school for a bit, but the damage was done. He never forgot how it felt to be forced into labor. He ended up writing about child hardship and social injustice in many of his novels.
By the blazing constellations. That definitely explains the powerful social themes in his stories.
Exactly. He eventually became a law clerk, then a journalist, covering parliamentary debates. That's where he sharpened his observational skills and quick writing style. He published his first literary sketches under the pen name Boz, which gained moderate attention, but his real breakthrough came with the Pickwick Papers around 1836. It started as a simple series of sporting sketches and evolved into an incredibly popular serialized novel.
All in monthly installments, right? So it must have been a cliffhanger experience for readers, waiting for each chapter.
Yes, exactly. Serialization was a big part of Dickens' success. After Pickwick, he wrote Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, and many more. He married Catherine Hogarth in 1836, and they had 10 children, although that marriage hit a rocky end later on.
I recall something about him separating from his wife. Did that affect his writing?
It undoubtedly impacted his personal life. They legally separated in the late 1850s, which was scandalous for the time. Dickens retained custody of most of the children. Around then, he became close to Ellen Ternan, a young actress. Historians still debate the nature of that relationship, but it's clear she traveled with him frequently on his public reading tours.
So he was famous not just for writing, but also for performing his works in public, right?
Correct. Dickens would do dramatic readings of his novels. Audiences adored it, and it brought him additional income. However, it wore him down. He was already writing at a frenetic pace, churning out A Christmas Carol, Bleak House, A Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations, among others. These tours, combined with his heavy writing schedule, took a toll on his health.
What about his travels to the United States? I heard he had a love-hate relationship with America.
He visited the US in 1842, expecting a perfect reception, and was initially welcomed warmly. But he criticized social issues, especially slavery, and that upset many readers there. Eventually, he returned later for public readings and found more success.
It's fascinating how he juggled social commentary, family life, and a massive literary output. Did that ever slow him down?
Not until his final years. In 1865, he was in a serious train accident at Staplehurst. Although he survived, he never quite recovered from the shock. He passed away in 1870 after suffering a stroke, and, Despite his own wish for a modest burial, he was interred in Westminster Abbey's Poets' Corner.
A fitting tribute to such a monumental writer. So, in brief, we have a self-made man who rose from severe childhood hardships to become one of the Victorian era's greatest novelists.
That's right. He used his experiences, imprisonment of a parent, child labor, financial insecurity, to fuel his creativity. His novels often highlight moral and social issues, reflecting that personal motivation.
That flashback on Dickens was incredible, so vivid and insightful.
Indeed. A special thanks to Clara for spotlighting Dickens' chart. His life is a treasure trove for us traditional astrologers.
I'd love a solid biography recommendation, something comprehensive that students can dive into.
My go-to is Charles Dickens, A Life, by Claire Tomlin. It's about 560 pages, immensely detailed, weaving Dickens' childhood in poverty, his meteoric rise as a journalist and novelist, his public readings, family crises, and complex relationships, all with deep psychological insight. It's beautifully researched and richly illustrated, perfect for anyone looking to understand the man behind the stars.
That's a thoughtful pick, perfect for students wanting to connect chart to character.
Recommendation logged. Charles Dickens, A Life, biography rich in literary and personal context.
And who's next on the list?
Next up, Petrarch. Cherry, cue the flashback into his chart and life overview.
Accessing Petrarch data now.
Wait a minute, Arlo. Clara introduced Charles Dickens in episode 4. It's my turn today. I want to present a historical figure whose life was simple yet profoundly influential.
All right, Ella, you've earned it. Who do you have in mind?
I've always been interested in the history of humanism and the Renaissance. My pick is Petrarch.
Ah, Petrarch, the father of humanism. An excellent choice. Cherry, can you check Astrodatabank for his birth details?
Astrodatabank lists Petrarch's birth data as July 20, 1304, Julian calendar, 4:33 a.m. in Arezzo, Italy, with a Rodin rating of B.
A Rodin rating of B? That means the birth time is from a biography or historical estimate, right?
Correct. The birth time is based on a line from the biography written by Maurice Bishop. He entered the world as day was dawning.
That's promising. Let's cast the chart and see if it aligns with what we know of his life. Cherry, generate the chart using whole sign houses.
Casting the chart now.
Alright, Leo rising, with the Sun and Mercury in Leo as well. Ella, what's your first impression?
Petrarch was obsessed with fame, and he actually achieved it. He was crowned poet laureate. This heavy Leo energy makes perfect sense. He wasn't just writing poetry, he was crafting a legacy.
By the blazing constellations. That's a perfect connection. Looks like we have a solid working chart. Clara, can you determine the chart sect?
The sun is below the horizon but within 6 degrees of it. That puts it right in the range for civil twilight. What do we do in this case, Arlo?
Great question, Clara. Since it's so close to the horizon and rising, we classify it as a diurnal chart.
Can we get the exact degrees for the ascendant and midheaven?
The ascendant is at 1 degree and 41 minutes Leo. The midheaven is at 15 degrees and 10 minutes Aries.
Thanks, Cherry. Now, let's get a full planetary breakdown, along with their whole sign house placements.
Saturn, 3 degrees and 37 minutes Libra in the 3rd house. Jupiter, 5 degrees and 39 minutes Virgo in the 2nd house. Mars, 13 degrees and 21 minutes Cancer in the 12th house. Sun, 4 degrees and 37 minutes Leo in the 1st house. Venus, 27 degrees and 33 minutes Gemini in the 11th house. Mercury, 4 degrees and 52 minutes Leo in the 1st house. Moon, 4 degrees and 36 minutes Pisces in the 8th house.
Excellent. That 1st house Sun and Mercury in Leo really emphasize his identity as a public figure and intellectual leader.
Can you also list the nodes and the part of fortune?
Of course. North Node, 15 degrees and 25 minutes Sagittarius in the 5th house. South Node, 15 degrees and 25 minutes Gemini in the 11th house. Part of fortune, 1 degree and 42 minutes Capricorn in the 6th house.
Fantastic. Step by step, we're building our understanding of traditional astrology through real-world examples.
All right, everyone. Today we're diving into the life of Francesco Petrarca, better known as Petrarch, poet, scholar, and the so-called father of humanism. His contributions to literature and classical scholarship set the foundation for the Renaissance.
By Jupiter's mighty thunder, that's quite the introduction. But tell me, Ella, what makes him so important? We've had poets and scholars before. What sets him apart?
Glad you asked, Arlo. Petrarch wasn't just any poet. He was obsessed with the classics. He rediscovered lost texts from ancient Rome, preserving knowledge that would have otherwise faded into obscurity. Ever heard of Cicero's letters? Well, they might have been lost forever if not for Petrarch's relentless search for classical manuscripts.
His work paved the way for Renaissance humanism, didn't it? He focused on individual experience, critical thinking, and personal growth, ideas that challenged the dominant medieval worldview.
So, he was like a bridge between the old world and the new?
Exactly. Petrarch was born in 1304 in Arezzo, Italy, but his family had been exiled from Florence. His father wanted him to become a lawyer, so he sent young him to study law in Montpellier and later Bologna.
Let me guess, he wasn't exactly thrilled about that career path.
Not in the slightest. He had no interest in law and spent all his time reading classical literature instead. And get this, his father, frustrated with his obsession, burned his collection of books.
Burned his books? That's brutal.
Well, in a way, it worked. It forced him to focus, but didn't his father leave him a few books after seeing his devastation?
Yes, Cicero and Virgil were spared, and those books became his lifelong companions. He read and reread them so much that their words practically became part of his own thoughts.
By Saturn's stern gaze, a man who treated books like sacred relics, I like him already.
It didn't take long for him to abandon his legal studies completely. After his father died, he gave up law and fully embraced his passion for classical learning.
But what about his poetry? He's famous for love poetry, right?
Yes, in 1327, he met a woman named Laura in Avignon, and she became the muse for his most famous work, Il Canzoniere, or the Songbook. He poured his emotions into these 366 poems, capturing love, longing, and deep introspection.
But Laura was already married, wasn't she?
That's right. His love was unrequited, which made his poetry even more poignant. And unlike many of his other works, which were in Latin, Il Canzoniere was written in Italian, shaping the modern Italian language.
Ah, the suffering poet trope. Saturn would approve.
He did suffer plenty, but beyond poetry, Petrarch was an insatiable scholar. In the 1330s, he traveled across Europe, hunting down ancient texts. He found a rare copy of Cicero's Proarchia in Liège, and in 1345, he made his greatest discovery, Cicero's lost letters in Verona.
That must have been a huge deal. Preserving lost knowledge, reconnecting with the past. It's like he was reviving a lost civilization.
Exactly. That discovery is considered one of the key moments that ignited the Renaissance.
And wasn't he crowned poet laureate in 1341? That was a significant honor in Rome, reaffirming his status as a literary giant.
Yes, he was crowned in the audience hall of the Senatorial Palace on April 8, 1341, becoming the first poet laureate since antiquity. It was a moment of triumph for classical scholarship.
By Mercury's swift wings, a poet honored like a king. That's a legacy worthy of Saturn's endurance.
But despite his public success, he struggled internally. He was torn between worldly ambition and spiritual introspection. His brother Gherardo became a monk in 1343, which only deepened his crisis. This inner turmoil led him to write The Secret, a philosophical dialogue where he debated his own flaws and desires with Saint Augustine and Lady Truth.
A man questioning himself, trying to reconcile ambition with inner peace. That's very Saturnian, isn't it?
I see you're getting into the traditional astrology mindset, Katrina. Yes, it's a very Saturnian struggle. Ambition versus solitude, intellect versus emotional depth.
And then came the Black Death. He lost many friends, and even Laura, during the plague years of 1347 to 1351. It was a devastating time for him. His writings from this period reflect deep sorrow. But he turned to philosophy, writing De Remediis Utriusque Fortunae, a work on dealing with both good and bad fortune through a Stoic approach.
Saturn strikes again, teaching through hardship.
But he found a friend in Giovanni Boccaccio, another famous writer. Their friendship fueled the humanist movement. They sought lost manuscripts, studied the classics, and championed the revival of Roman philosophy.
And how did his life end?
He moved frequently: Milan, Venice, and finally, Padua. Even in his later years, he kept writing, compiling his letters and continuing Il Canzoniere. He passed away on July 19, 1374, with a quill in hand, still immersed in his work.
A true scholar to the very end, by the blazing constellations. What a life! Poetic passion, intellectual hunger, personal struggles, it's like a grand epic in itself.
And he left behind more than just poetry. He shaped the very essence of Renaissance thought.
I wasn't expecting him to be so much more than just a poet. He was a relentless seeker of knowledge, piecing together the wisdom of the past to shape the future, a true bridge between ancient Rome and the modern world.
That's why we're studying him. His life is filled with so many Saturnian themes: persistence, discipline, hardship, and ultimately, legacy. That was lovely, Arlo. Petrarch's chart really does reflect a life full of deep feeling and lofty ideals.
By Mercury's swift wings, what a fascinating life he led. And to anyone who wants to go deeper, there's one biography I strongly recommend: Petrarch and His World by Maurice Bishop.
I've actually started reading that. Bishop's writing is so elegant, it feels like he's painting with words. He makes Petrarch's world come alive without getting lost in dry facts.
Exactly. It's scholarly without being heavy, poetic without drifting into fantasy. He weaves Petrarch's inner struggles, humanist ideals, and cultural legacy into a rich and readable tapestry. A true gem for astrology students trying to connect a birth chart to lived experience.
And I love that it places Petrarch in his historical moment. It helps make the transits and planetary periods feel grounded in real life.
Yes, if you're serious about biographical chart study, building a timeline from a well-written life story like this is crucial. It gives context to what the stars reveal.
So, who's next on our celestial tour?
Prepare yourself. We're traveling next to the fiery intellect and revolutionary spirit of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Cherry, ready the flashback.
Loading Tilak's birth chart and life highlights. Engaging flashback mode.
Hello everyone. I'd like to introduce the birth chart of Bal Gangadhar Tilak.
By Jupiter's mighty thunder, Tilak, a lion-hearted revolutionary, one of the first true voices for Indian independence.
Tilak. I've heard of him, but I didn't realize he was so pivotal. What made you choose him, Katrina?
Because he embodied courage, intellect, and fire. I wanted to explore how that shows up in a traditional birth chart.
A worthy chart indeed. Alright, Cherry, let's check AstroDataBank for the details.
Confirmed. Bal Gangadhar Tilak was born on July 23, 1856 at 6:24 a.m. in Ratnagiri, India. Rodden rating, A.
Rodden rating A. That means the birth time is well sourced and accurate, ideal for chart work.
Perfect. Let's roll with whole sign houses. Cherry, bring up the chart.
Chart generated. Ascendant is Leo with the Sun and Venus in the first house.
Leo rising with the Sun and Venus? The man was practically born to lead rallies and steal the spotlight.
Or maybe born to be dramatic and stubborn? You Leos always think leadership is destiny.
Leadership is destiny, Ella, especially when Jupiter backs you up from the 9th house.
He was deeply admired. People saw him as fearless and principled.
The Sun is above the horizon, so this is a diurnal chart. Jupiter, as a member of the day sect, gains strength here.
Cherry, could you give us the exact degrees for the ascendant and midheaven?
Ascendant is 10 degrees and 7 minutes Leo. Midheaven is 9 degrees and 22 minutes Taurus.
Fantastic. Let's get a full breakdown. Planets and their whole sign houses.
Here's the lineup. Saturn, 7 degrees 12 minutes Cancer, 12th house. Jupiter, 9 degrees 7 minutes Aries, 9th house. Mars, 25 degrees 33 minutes Libra, 3rd house. Sun, 0 degrees 18 minutes Leo, 1st house. Venus, 0 degrees 57 minutes Leo, 1st house. Mercury, 12 degrees 56 minutes Cancer, 12th house. Moon, 9 degrees 40 minutes Aries, 9th house.
Cherry, Could you add the nodes and the part of fortune, please?
Certainly. North Node, 19 degrees 22 minutes Aries, 9th house. South Node, 19 degrees 22 minutes Libra, 3rd house. Part of fortune, 19 degrees 29 minutes Aries, 9th house.
9th house is loaded. Jupiter, Moon, North Node, part of fortune. That's a strong statement for someone known for ideological conviction and writing.
With that Leo rising, I'm guessing he didn't exactly whisper his opinions either.
No, Ella, he roared them. Let's not forget, this is the man who declared, "Swaraj is my birthright." Jupiter in Aries gave him vision and fire.
Before we dive into interpretation, Katrina, can you walk us through his life and accomplishments?
Gladly. He was much more than a leader. He was a philosopher, educator, and journalist. Let me give you a brief overview.
Then let's jump right in. By Saturn's stern gaze, Katrina, you've picked quite the revolutionary. So tell us, who was Tilak really?
He was much more than a political firebrand. Tilak was a thinker, an educator, a journalist, and one of the earliest to say out loud, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it." He was born in 1856 in Ratnagiri, in a Chitpavan Brahmin family. His mother died early, and his father passed when Tilak was just 16, leaving him orphaned, but determined.
And he still managed to earn degrees in math and law. That's impressive. Sounds like he had a Capricorn-style work ethic.
Clara, you would notice that.
He co-founded the New English School in 1880, pushing modern education with a nationalist spirit. But it was in 1881, when he started publishing the Kesari and the Maharatta, that his voice truly reached the public.
Kasari, that's Marathi for lion, right? What a name for a paper.
Correct, Arlo. The title symbolized strength, courage, and resistance, precisely the tone Tilak adopted in his editorials.
So was he always against British rule, even from the start?
Pretty much. He challenged both the colonial government and the moderate faction of the Indian National Congress. He believed political awareness had to reach the masses through newspapers, festivals, and history. That's why he revived Ganesh Utsav and Shivaji Jayanti to create unity and pride.
Using culture as a tool for resistance, smart, and very grounded in tradition.
Hold on, didn't he get jailed for inciting violence during the plague?
Yes. In 1897, after the British enforced humiliating plague control measures in Pune, Tilak criticized them harshly in Kesari. A British officer, Walter Rand, was assassinated shortly after. Tilak wasn't involved, but the British blamed him anyway. And he was imprisoned for 18 months.
18 months in prison just for writing editorials? That's brutal.
Indeed. He was tried under Section 124A for sedition.
Then in 1905, when the British partitioned Bengal, Tilak called for Swadeshi, boycotting British goods and promoting Indian ones. This escalated into the Swadeshi movement.
Wasn't that when the Indian National Congress split?
Exactly. In 1907, the Surat session exploded into chaos. Tilak was prevented from speaking physically. The Congress split into moderates and extremists. Tilak, of course, led the more assertive group.
Sounds like he was constantly pushing boundaries. Press, Congress, education, religion.
A true Jupiterian spirit. Expansive, bold, and unwilling to play small.
In 1908, he was jailed again for sedition, this time for 6 years. In Manly jail, he wrote Gita Rahasya, interpreting the Bhagavad Gita as a call to action. Not just devotion, but duty.
He turned prison into philosophy? That's intense.
That's Tilak. After his release in 1914, he helped form the Home Rule League with Annie Besant and even traveled to England in 1918 to advocate for India's freedom.
Did it make a difference?
He built bridges, worked with the Labour Party. The tide was turning. But he was already aging. After returning to India, he continued his efforts until he passed away in 1920.
Upon his death, Gandhi called him the maker of modern India.
By the blazing constellations, what a legacy.
He wasn't just fighting colonial power. He was shaping minds, sparking change. His impact went far beyond politics.
Exactly. That's why I picked Tilak. His convictions were fearless. He stood by his beliefs, no matter the cost.
And the scope of his contributions, from education to civil rights, makes him a remarkable figure for astrological study.
Awesome. Tilak, the father of Indian unrest. His moon and Jupiter in Aries speak volumes. You can feel the fire in his convictions.
By Jupiter's mighty thunder, Katrina really opened the doors when she brought up Tilak's chart. His horoscope is a gateway to studying the astrological signatures of Indian revolutionaries.
I'd love to understand more about his life beyond the chart. Any book you'd recommend for getting the full picture?
Absolutely. I highly recommend Lokmanya Tilak, a biography, by A.K. Bhagwat and G.P. Pradhan. It's a detailed, engaging account of Tilak's journey, from a brilliant student to a fearless advocate for Swaraj. The book gives insight into his philosophy, his leadership, and how deeply tradition shaped his modern nationalism.
That sounds like exactly what we need, to see how planetary symbolism translates into real-world action, especially in a figure who helped shape a nation's destiny.
And for those unfamiliar with India's cultural and political past, this book is a window into the soul of a complex era. A must-read for anyone studying astrology with historical depth.
All right, Arlo. Who are we looking at next?
Time to travel back to the Renaissance. Cherry, set the gears in motion. We're visiting the brilliant mind of Nicolaus Copernicus.
Dusting off parchment maps and heliocentric models. Engaging flashback sequence now.
By the brilliance of the heavens, today's chart is a personal favorite. We're diving into the life and sky of none other than Nicolaus Copernicus.
Copernicus, the man who dared to say the sun, not the earth, was at the center? I'm already intrigued.
His insights were revolutionary, but they weren't exactly embraced at the time. He published only near the end of his life.
Indeed. Cherry, can you grab his birth data from Astrodatabank?
Confirmed. Copernicus was born February 19, 1473, at 5:13 p.m., Julian calendar, in Torun, Poland. Rodin rating, AA.
AA rating? That's as reliable as it gets. Was it recorded by astrologers?
Yes. Source is listed as astrologers present at the birth.
Astrologers attending births? Imagine how detailed their notes must have been.
Back when the stars weren't just symbolic, they were state-sanctioned advisors. Let's cast the chart, whole sign houses as always.
Generating the chart now.
Virgo rising, Sun and Mercury in Pisces, Saturn in Gemini, 10th house. Ella, initial thoughts?
Virgo rising says precision, detail. But Mercury in Pisces? That's intuitive, dreamy, almost poetic. And Saturn in Gemini in the 10th? Career obstacles, but also intellectual mastery under pressure.
By the blazing constellations, yes, that Saturn reflects his struggle to publish his heliocentric model, decades in the making.
Should we check the chart sect? The sun is low, but close to setting.
Good eye, Clara. It's within 6 degrees of the horizon, civil twilight range. I checked the Fridaria sequence earlier. It fits a nocturnal chart, so we're treating it as such.
What are the exact angles, Cherry?
Ascendant is 7 degrees and 2 minutes Virgo. Midheaven is 28 degrees and 55 minutes Taurus.
Great, let's get the planetary layout by whole sign houses.
Saturn, 18 degrees and 36 minutes Gemini, 10th house. Jupiter, 4 degrees and 33 minutes Sagittarius, 4th house. Mars, 21 degrees and 43 minutes Aquarius, 6th house. Sun, 10 degrees and 11 minutes Pisces, 7th house. Venus, 7 degrees and 10 minutes Aries, 8th house. Mercury, 26 degrees and 30 minutes Pisces, 7th house. Moon, 5 degrees and 32 minutes Sagittarius, 4th house.
That Moon-Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius is beautiful. A strong signature for philosophy, astronomy, and expansive vision.
Cherry, can you pull the nodal positions and part of fortune?
North Node, 24 degrees and 40 minutes Scorpio, 3rd house. South Node, 24 degrees and 40 minutes Taurus, 9th house. Part of fortune, 2 degrees and 22 minutes Gemini, 10th house.
Brilliant placements. That 10th house part of fortune really stands out. By the blazing constellations. Today, We're exploring the life of a man who changed the way we see the entire universe, Nicolaus Copernicus. Let's take it from the very beginning.
I know he proposed that the Earth revolves around the sun, right? But where did his story begin?
Copernicus was born on February 19, 1473, in the city of Thorn, Poland. His name in Polish was Mikołaj Kopernik. His father was a successful merchant, and after his death, young Nicholas was taken under the wing of his uncle, Lucas Watson-Rode, who later became the Bishop of Warmia. That connection gave him the support he needed to pursue education, and eventually a position as a canon.
So he had a strong foundation in both the church and academia. Where did he study?
First, at the University of Krakow from 1491 to 1495, where he studied astronomy, mathematics, and astrology. That's where he encountered the geocentric model of the universe, but he already sensed something didn't quite add up.
And then he went to Italy, right?
Exactly. In 1496, he enrolled at the University of Bologna to study canon law. But the real spark? He studied astronomy under Domenico Maria Novara, and even made one of his earliest observations, a lunar occultation of Aldebaran.
That event was recorded on March 9, 1497.
So when did he start forming his big idea, the heliocentric model?
His exposure to inconsistencies in the Ptolemaic system, especially from texts like the Epitome of the Almagest, led him to reconsider everything. Around the early 1500s, while in Padua studying medicine, and later earning a doctorate in canon law at Ferrara in 1503, he was quietly piecing together an alternative model of the universe.
But he was also working for the church then, right?
Yes, after his studies, he returned to serve his uncle in Lidzbark, acting as secretary and physician. Later he moved to Frombork, where he took up his duties as a canon. Even while fulfilling church roles, he kept working on his astronomical studies in private.
When did he actually share his heliocentric ideas?
In 1514, he circulated a short manuscript called the Commentariolus among friends. That's where he first proposed that the Earth rotates daily and orbits the Sun annually, while the stars remain fixed and very distant.
That must have been a huge leap at the time. Did people accept it?
Not exactly. He kept his findings mostly private. He had many responsibilities. He managed finances, practiced medicine, translated Greek texts, and even helped defend Alston Castle from the Teutonic Knights in 1520. But also, yes, he feared ridicule and controversy.
Then how did the De Revolutionibus finally get published?
Enter Georg Rheticus, a brilliant young mathematician from Wittenberg. In 1539, Rheticus visited Copernicus and became a student of his theory. He published a summary called Narratio Prima in 1540, which was well received. That gave Copernicus the confidence to allow full publication.
De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium was published in early 1543, by Johannes Petrarch in Nuremberg. It was dedicated to Pope Paul III.
But didn't someone mess with the book before it went out?
Yes, unfortunately. Andreas Osiander, a theologian, added an unauthorized preface suggesting the heliocentric model was just hypothetical. It undercut Copernicus' intent, and confused readers for generations.
And what happened to Copernicus?
He suffered a stroke in late 1542 and died on May 24, 1543, but not before receiving a copy of his printed book. The world didn't immediately understand his ideas. The book was dense, technical, and ignored for a while. It was even placed on the Index of Prohibited Books by the Catholic Church in 1616.
But eventually it gained recognition.
Absolutely. His work lit the fuse for the scientific revolution. Kepler refined his model, Galileo validated it with telescopic evidence, and Newton crowned it with the law of universal gravitation. What began as a quiet idea in a Polish canon study redefined the cosmos.
That was great, Arlo. And if I'm remembering right, it was you who first brought Copernicus's birth chart to the table. A bold choice.
By the brilliance of the celestial spheres, yes, Copernicus is a towering figure, not just for his heliocentric theory, but for the tension he lived through. A man of numbers, yes, but also of mystery and delay. His life wasn't easy, and the chart reflects that subtle complexity.
Do you have a book you'd recommend for students who want to explore his life further? Something that really gets into who he was beyond the astronomy?
Absolutely. Copernicus' Secret, How the Scientific Revolution Began by Jack Repchak is my top pick. It goes beyond the math and into the man. It shows Copernicus not just as the quiet genius who shifted the cosmos, but as a cautious, conflicted thinker, caught between church politics, academic rivalries, and a world on the brink of revolution.
Historical context downloaded. Caution, contains intense academic drama and a heliocentric worldview.
That sounds fascinating, and definitely essential reading. It's so easy to reduce historical figures to their theories, but this helps us see the human behind the horoscope.
And that wraps today's starry stroll through the lives behind the charts. Starting next week, we dive into the zodiac signs, the traditional way.
If you've been enjoying this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.
Until then, keep your eyes on the stars and your ephemeris close.
Transmission complete. Logging off. Until the next orbit.